The Minister of Water and Sanitation, that's Pemmy Majodina, will attend a high-level preparatory meeting from the 26th to the 27th January in Dakar, Senegal, ahead of the 2026 United Nations Water Conference. The meeting sets the stage for the United Nations Water Conference, scheduled to take place in December, and will shape the priorities, commitments and partnerships needed to accelerate progress on safe water and dignified sanitation. For more on this, we're joined by Dr Risimati Mathye, DDG at Water and Sanitation Department. Thank you very much for your time, DDG. And I want us to start by talking about the importance of this particular meeting, because, of course, last year we had the AU investment on water issues. But why is this one important?
Well, thanks, Linda, for having us. One will have to maybe take a minute to remind the viewers that the topic of water has now actually gotten the global community to take it quite serious. And I think in the past, issues of water was basically more like a stepchild in major discussions globally. And the last UN Water Conference, Linda, you won't believe it, it actually happened in 1977. In Argentina, and that was for the 6 years before the 2023 UN Water Conference that happened in the US. Now, in that UN Water Conference, a decision was taken that, seeing that the global community, specifically Africa, is lagging behind to achieve the SDG 6 2030. It was therefore agreed and motivated and recommended that Africa should actually look for other options of funding, because one of the gaps that were identified was basically the issue of funding, which in a case, water has always been seen as a social good, and therefore the private sector never saw a need to invest in water. And hence, you saw us last year within the 7 administration, where water is taken as a priority number 1, taken by the president. We then held the AU AIP water investment in Cape Town in August, where the African Union, flowing from the 2023 decision that was taken in the UN, through that commission, highlighted to say there has to be a need. And Africa, in particular, specifically South Africa, took a stand to say, we know the shortcomings in our country, we know that the reforms are currently happening, therefore there's a need for us to champion it, and hence the AIP happened. Now, what will be happening now, Linda, in Dakar, in Senegal, is that through those negotiations and the bilaterals that we're having as a country, we therefore submitted our name to the UN delegation to say, as South Africa, we want to co-host the thematic area on financial investment. And therefore, the meeting that is happening now in Dakar, since we have been successful as a country to co-host, to co-chair rather, the thematic area on water investment, where the minister will co-chair, Minister Pemmy Majodina will co-chair with the Minister of France in this thematic area. So what's going to be happening in Dakar is basically the preparations. We need to look at what are the key areas that we need to look at as we plan towards the UN Water Conference, which will be happening in December this year, co-hosted by Senegal and the UAE.
Yeah, when it comes to achieving that goal of the SDG 6, you know, last year we heard the minister talking about 80 priority water investment projects across about 38 countries. Talk to us about the estimation there, because she said that they're estimating about 10 to 12 billion rands that's meant to come from those investments. Are those also going to form part of these meetings?
So yes, you are correct, Linda. So what happened in the AIP summit was that the entire African continent championed key projects, over 8 of those projects. And in South Africa, we submitted our own projects throughout the country that are quite critical, that cut between the socio-economic centric as well as the economic component. Now, the value that Minister has indicated is the commitment by the private sector, because they've come to understand that at the moment, water is not necessarily a social good. They are actually bankable projects. So when we get to Dakar, these are some of the conversations that we'll be having, because there will be partners, there will be multilateral banks that will be looking at some of these projects. So we are basically extending the arm to further have a conversation around how we can actually crowdfund the budget to do this project.
And let's just talk about, the water situation, particularly when you look at South Africa, who will be heading to that particular meeting. Some analysts talk about how infrastructure is near collapse, and there's a greater need to update that infrastructure and pour money into it. Let's talk about where it is right now and the plans to address those issues.
So as you know, Linda, within our country, I think we are one of those highly legislated countries, and the three spheres of government, you always have to play safe not to overreach to other intergovernmental departments. Now, mostly the challenges we're having in the country are mostly resting within our water service authorities, in this case it's municipalities, where for the longest of time there have been no investment to upgrade, refurbish, as well as operation and maintenance. Now, in our own estimation as the department, we have come to a conclusion that if we are to keep the system going and to at least deal with the backlog of operation and maintenance, we'll have to invest roughly around 400 billion just to keep some of the old infrastructure going. Now, each municipality or each water service authority, even the metros, do have plans, Linda, to do upgrade, to do refurbishment. But what has been lacking is that our fiscal framework has been quite stretched to a point that the lack of revenue collection by municipalities also plays a role, because there's no core investment back into the infrastructure to keep it going. But plans are there in some municipalities, but of course, this needs to be accelerated by strategic decision-making to those who hold the authority, even in local government.
Yeah, you talk about a stretched fiscal framework, and one wonders, when it comes to issues of, the weather patterns that we're seeing and climate change and the impact that it has, one wonders if it is not an emergency or something that needs to be prioritized, given that, we're seeing flooding across many cities in South Africa. I mean, just over the past week, we saw, infrastructure not being able to bear the water that the province of Limpopo was getting. So one wonders then when these issues are going to be prioritized.
So the country has set up a national disaster management framework, and it's chaired by COC, and the other ministers plays a role in this. Now, talking of the current disasters that are happening, part of which, Linda, contribute because our infrastructure is aging, and there's very little investment into it. It doesn't mean that other countries don't go through what we're going through, but what they have mastered was that you need to upgrade and manage your infrastructure. Now, the current discussion is that each department, even with water and sanitation, we have done a roll call, we have done an assessment in Limpopo and in Mpumalanga to ensure that where we have sent our grants to support these municipalities, we should be able to reprioritize them. And basically, each and every department in the country that has its services located in those provinces, they have to repurpose their budget. And then once those budgets have been repurposed, they will be able to address those issues. But where there are shortcomings, you still have to go to the disaster management cluster to request more additional funding. Similar issue happened a few years ago, Linda, in the KZN, and this is a similar case we're having in Limpopo.
All right, thank you very much for that, Dr. Risimati Mathye, the DDG of the Department of Water and Sanitation.